The Landmarks Preservation Commission, LPC, is the largest municipal preservation agency in the nation. It is responsible for protecting New York City's architecturally, historically, and culturally significant buildings and sites. Sometimes even our most significant places face uncertain futures, and once lost, no amount of regret will bring them back. The New York City Landmarks Law was signed by Robert F. Wagner, Jr. in 1965 to protect historic sites and neighborhoods from hasty decisions to destroy or fundamentally alter their character. The law also established a permanent Landmarks Preservation Commission, the city agency that safeguards these buildings and places. The LPC has had 10 chairs prior to current chair Meenakshi Srinavasan. Each has witnessed protests, considered testimony, and presided over countless meetings and hearings in the interest of protecting more than 350 years of history recorded in New York City's built environment.
The LPC's first chair, Jeffrey Platt, presided over the body's first hearings in 1965. The Commission dedicated some 20 early landmarks, including Prospect Park Boathouse in Brooklyn, 6 buildings at Sailor Snug Harbor on Staten Island, and Stuyvesant Fish House in Lower Manhattan. Brooklyn Heights became the city's first historic district. Harmon Hendricks Goldstone, the LPC's second chairman, greatly expanded the panel's influence. According to the New York Times, on Mr. Goldstone's watch, the Commission gained the power to regulate landscape architecture and interior spaces like theaters and lobbies. It designated 60 blocks of Greenwich Village and 26 blocks of Soho as historic districts. Beverly Moss Spad became chair of the LPC in 1974. Under her leadership, Central Park, the Statue of Liberty, and the Chrysler Building were granted landmark status. In 1978, the Supreme Court established the constitutionality of landmarking buildings for the benefit of the public. In addition, Spad built a larger constituency for preservation by developing a landmark scholar program, convening a conference on the importance of neighborhoods with the National Trust, and securing funding from the federal government to undertake architectural and historical survey work in Brooklyn. With more than 3,000 designations during Kent Barwick's 6-year term as Landmarks Chair, many describe the period as the LPC's golden age. In addition to securing landmark status for the Upper East Side Historic District and Empire State Building, Barwick led the fight to protect the Lever House on Park Avenue, threatened by plans to replace the contemporary icon with a building twice as tall. Other notable achievements were the designation of the original IRT subway stations and the street plan of New Amsterdam and Colonial New York in Lower Manhattan. Jean A. Norman extended the protections of landmarking to the outer boroughs and Harlem. The Apollo Theater was landmarked in 1983 and the Cyclone roller coaster in Coney Island in 1988. He presided over the hearings on a proposal by St. Bartholomew's Church to replace its community house with a 47-story office tower. He succeeded in designating a number of Broadway theaters, protecting these culturally important buildings and their opulent interiors for future generations. David F. M. Todd sought to reform the LPC's management, clarify guidelines, and speed up the designation process. The international-style Seagram Building at 375 Park Avenue, designed by Mies van der Rohe with interiors by Philip Johnson, was landmarked in 1989, shortly after reaching the 30-year threshold for consideration. The building owners, as well as the Four Seasons restaurant, embraced the designation. Many designations were marked by controversy, but agreements were skillfully brokered by Laurie Beckelman. Though once considered outrageous and provocative, the Guggenheim Museum was landmarked in 1990. The LPC chalked up a major victory when a challenge to the landmark law over development rights at St. Bartholomew's was defeated in 1991. Eero Saarinen's TWA Terminal, the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, and the African Burial Ground in Lower Manhattan were among other noteworthy designations. Among the first landmark designations under LPC Chair Jennifer Rabb were two in Queens. The Unisphere in Flushing Meadows Corona Park was the centerpiece and visual logo of the 1964-65 New York World's Fair. The Underdunk House in Ridgewood, dating to 1709, illustrates the scope of the Commission's purview. The Commission also created a number of historic districts in the 1990s, including Stone Street in Lower Manhattan, Vinegar Hill in Brooklyn, and Douglaston in Queens. Sherida Paulson's tenure was marked by an effort to better understand the complex relationship between urban planning, design, and preservation, especially as rebuilding began after 9/11. Efforts to designate the Gansevoort Market Historic District in 2003 highlighted the challenges of retaining the historic character of the city's meatpacking district while managing plans for development. The 11-year chairmanship of Robert Tierney was the longest in the history of the LPC. During his tenure, the Commission designated 32 new historic districts. 21 of those districts were outside Manhattan, including Crown Heights in Brooklyn, Adsley Park in Queens, and the Grand Concourse in the Bronx. He also oversaw efforts to modernize the work of the Commission by launching a website, outlining the landmarking process and allowing building owners to apply for permits online.
Today, there are more than 32,000 landmark properties in New York City, most of which are located in 114 historic districts and 21 historic district extensions in all 5 boroughs. The total number of protected sites also includes 1,347 individual landmarks, 117 interior landmarks, and 10 scenic landmarks. Private residences, soaring office towers, urban neighborhoods, centuries-old mansions, houses of worship, transit, entertainment. The chairs of the Landmarks Preservation Commission have diligently safeguarded New York City's treasures while championing contextually inspired design. These places are enduring monuments to the Landmark Preservation Commission and its leaders, who, despite challenges, have maintained the highest standards of public service in carrying out their duties. In so doing, they have all become pillars of New York.